Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Phenomenal Views and Merry Christmas Eve. I know that's actually not a real thing, but it's Christmas, I'm in a happy mood. And how else can I do this, right? Hot chocolate Christmas movie review. Now for those of you who know me, you know I love Christmas. I mean, it's Christmas! Who doesn't love Christmas? Now, I'm not as crazy as Nostalgia Critic, having a song and painting his hair red and putting Christmas trees on his eyes. Of course, that was very awesome, but I'm not that into Christmas. But I love Christmas. Something that I used to do when I was a kid, and I still do this to this very day. I'm going to do this when I get married and have kids. I don't care. It's Christmas. I get up early before my mom and dad or anyone in my family. I get all the presents and I put them all in a pile, one for me and everyone else in my family, and we go through one and the other. That's just a Christmas tradition I love to do, and I'm gonna do it until the day I freaking die. But the Christmas movie I have come to talk about today is Muppets: A Christmas Carol. Now, I grew up with the Muppets, and I have Muppets Treasure Island. This is the very first time I have actually ever watched Muppets Christmas Carol, and it is awesome. With Gonzo playing Charles Dickens, with Kermit the Frog playing Bob Cratchit. This was a great nod to the story of Christmas Carol, and dumbed down for little kids versions. It was great. Micheal Cain plays a very, very good Scrooge. I've only seen two people play Scrooge in real person, and that would be Micheal Cain and my personal favorite, my acting teacher, Mr. Jeffrey Emmerich, which I'm honestly hoping he's watching this video because I love his performance of Scrooge. I love his performance of Scrooge, and this was a great performance of Scrooge by Micheal Cain. When he's first introduced to Scrooge, they build him up as they have a song about how rotten he is and how mean he is, but they also say it has to be because he's lonely. And so with that, we do get some stuff from the book, with him, saying humbug, humbug. And with people trying to get him to take donations, and as he says no, he would rather remain alone. Like when he's basically he's in his workshop or in his business place, and he's telling all of his employees to be quiet or else they're going to be fired. Micheal Cain plays a very fearful Scrooge, but he also plays a very kind Scrooge. Micheal Cain is almost good in anything. I have never seen a bad movie that he has been in. But he plays a very good Scrooge. And Kermit, it's freaking Kermit the Frog. Kermit the Frog as anything is great. He is a very awesome Bob Cratchit. And Miss Piggy as his wife. I love Miss Piggy. It's so great. But they do get the characteristics of Scrooge right, of how the people are trying to take up donations. He says, "I wish to remain alone. I pay money to the prisons and stuff, but I'm not going to pay money to the poorhouse. And if they're going to die, they might as well and decrease the population of this planet." And we just get we get by Micheal Cain how mean Scrooge is, and they talk about how, because they do talk about instead of Jacob Marley, it's Jacob and Robert Marley, the Marleys, and they're played by the two Muppets who are always going, oh, ho, 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 which I thought that was very funny. But they do the spirit scenes quite right. With Scrooge doesn't. Yeah, I got tongue twisted. Scrooge sees Bob Marley's face on his door, and it starts to freak him out a little bit. And Gonzo Charles Dickens is narrating the entire story as Scrooge is walking through the town, and also through the rest of the story, following Scrooge and telling us the story. And it's very good. And we also always get the banter between him and Renzo, the hungry rat. But the only thing I was wanting, but I unfortunately did not get, was the spirits played by Muppets. One is played by one Muppet. I don't know who it was, but I was honestly thinking that the spirits were going to be played by Muppets, but unfortunately they weren't. But they do all of his past. They do all of the spirits, stuff. Ghost of Christmas Past comes first. After the Marleys say when the clock tolls 1 and how they are chained because of how they were in life, and because how they were in life, they're chained to, you know, they're chained pretty much. And they basically say, you are going to be visited by 3 spirits, and he's like, I've already had enough. No, that's enough. And Micheal Cain also plays a very scared Scrooge, and he was very believable as Scrooge. I loved him as Scrooge. And instead of him... No, he does go to sleep, but he tries to, like, prepare himself for it. So, like, he's in his bed with a fire poker, and he wakes up, and then he's like, it must be 1. And then the Ghost of Christmas Past comes. And instead, you know, from what I've seen from the Christmas Carol play, it showed Scrooge as a lonely kid who got taken home. But in this, whenever people would be like, come on, Scrooge, it's Christmas, he was already like that. He was at his boarding school, becoming a businessman, and he was already not really liking Christmas. And when he was talking to the spirit, he was like, it was the only time I could get extra work done, because he had the place to himself. But they always do talk about on how he was so used to being alone, and how he actually hated being alone. And then when this happens, it talks about like how he on how he graduated. I did think it was funny though when he said about being a businessman. I forget his name, but he says, it's the American way. And then Gonzo comes up, he's like, oh, it is the British way. And it was just hilarious. And then Ghost of Christmas Past takes him to Fuzzy-Wig. I thought that was pretty good. And Fuzzy plays Fezziwig, and we do get dancing, and we do get the introduction of Belle, who Scrooge fell in love with. And I guess because of how I've seen the play, and it's more drawn out in detail, I guess I didn't like the fact that like they kind of ended. They didn't really say why Scrooge and Belle broke up. But it was basically like how Belle was wanting them to be married, and Scrooge was too, but he's like, I can't afford it right now, we don't have enough money, and I also have bills to pay. And so all it says is she's like, you did love me once, and then she goes off, and then he says, please, spirit, show me no more. Now, they did cut a scene out, and it was before Ghost of Christmas Past takes him back home. It was the scene of Scrooge seeing Belle talk to her new husband, and then he meets Ghost of Christmas Present. I love Ghost of Christmas Present in this movie. It's so funny. He's repeating things all the time, and Scrooge is like, I don't think I've ever encountered someone someone like you before. He's like, really? None of my 1,800 brothers and sisters? And he's like, oh, 1,800? Imagine the grocery bill. And I thought that was funny, because I work at a grocery store, and I started to think, my gosh, how many buggies of food would that be? Oh, good gosh, I mean, dang. But then, like, he starts taking him through, and there's a lot of great songs in this movie. And it fits the tone of the story. Whenever it's dark, it's a song about dark, or it's a song about a dark time. When it's a happy song, it's happy. When it's sad, sad once again. And he's talking about like how Christmas is supposed to be this time where everyone loves everyone, and Scrooge is like, I have never really been taught the true ways of Christmas. I have never experienced the true ways of Christmas. And so Ghost of Christmas Present takes him to where we see Kermit and his family, and how Miss Piggy has 2 twins and she cannot remember their names. She always gets the names wrong. And I'm not gonna lie, when I seen the scene, see what I did there, with Tiny Tim, and they started singing, I actually did start to cry. Because I've seen the story so many times, and the thing with Tiny Tim, it's heartbreaking. The little kid who is so small, he knows he's sick, but he doesn't care. He's not worried about it. He's enjoying life. And when he starts coughing, I started to tear up even more, because even though as happy as Tiny Tim was, he would start coughing, and his mom and dad would start to get worried, and then it would fade off, and then Ghost of Christmas Present would take him to his oh crud, what is his nephew's name? Dang it, I forget what his nephew's name is. But it's Scrooge's nephew, and they do have that, and they do have the party. Okay, let me see. What was his Miss Piggy? Miss Piggy's played by a man? Well, okay, Ebenezer Scrooge. Fred. Fred is his nephew. And on how Fred does do the game, but this time it kind of felt a little bit mean-spirited, and I guess that's the tone they were going for because on how Scrooge is. But I honestly prefer how they did it, and this is because this is how I've seen it so many times. No matter how mean Scrooge is to Fred, his nephew, Fred always shows him love, and he's like, I hope that one day you will come to love Christmas and join me and my family. And they do play the game of how, like, you know, yes and no, and how they talk about Scrooge as an animal and how he's very disagreeable. And it does hit Micheal Cain hard, and once again, Micheal Cain plays a very convincing Scrooge. When he's sad, it's horrible. But when he starts to realize that these lessons he's learning is because he needs to, this movie is definitely it's a great Christmas movie, and it can brighten up anyone's day. So then we finally go to Ghost of Christmas That Is Yet to Come. And we see of how, in the beginning of the film, when they were showing the town of London, they showed these 3 pigs, and it's like, oh, that was a great meal. What do you want to do now? Lunch? Lunch. Ho, 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 ho. It was these pigs, and they were like, I thought he'd never die. And they were talking about how if there was a funeral, they would go, if there was a lunch provided. Speaking of lunch. And they do go through most of Christmas Yet to Come's things, like with that. Or when they go to Old Joe, who was selling his stuff, and Scrooge is like, I understand what I must do now if I do not want my life to become this of that tortured man's. And then he's like, Spirit, show me a family, show me some joy with a joyful family. He takes him back to Bob Cratchit's, and he's like, ah, yes, Bob Cratchit, thank you for taking me here. But then he realized, he's like, it's quiet. Why is it so quiet? Because when Ghost of Christmas Present took him to Bob's house before, his part of town was a joyful place. You could not be around that place without smiling, but now something was different. And then he looked through the window, and Miss Piggy is crying, and then he's like, oh no, not Tiny Tim, not Tiny Tim. And then Bob Cratchit comes in, and he talks about how we should not reflect on, or that they should reflect on what Tiny Tim always taught them, and how no matter how bad things got down, Tiny Tim was always saying, God bless us, everyone, and how Tiny Tim could always bring a smile to your face. So then he said, and then the Spirit takes Scrooge to the graveyard, and he's like, why are we here? And then he keeps showing him the gravestone, and he's like, I know that things can be changed. Why are you showing me this if I'm already past hope? And then he looks at the gravestone, and then he pleads with the Spirit, saying, I will love Christmas in my heart. I will live in the past, present, and the future. I will have joy in my heart. And then he wakes up in his bed, and then all is happy again. He starts singing songs. He provides money for charity. He gets that Christmas turkey dinner, and he takes it to Bob Cratchit's house. And it's not just him. He goes to Fred's, and he talks about how he's going to be there for dinner. And you can just tell when Micheal Cain plays Happy Scrooge, the room lightens up. Everything just lightens up, and it gets better. And then the movie ends with them singing, and of course instead of Tiny Tim saying it, Tiny Tim says, God bless us. Scrooge says, God bless us, everyone. And then the movie ends with them singing. And then, of course, we get one more narration by Gonzo, who says to Renzo, he's like, if you like it, you should read the book. And they did leave the story because when Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come was around, they're like, this is too scary. Yeah, kids, guys, you're on your own. We'll be back later. But The Christmas Carol is a great story. This is a great Christmas movie. I give this movie a 10. A 10 out of 10 stars. I know I do 5 or 10, but it's a movie that you, around Christmas time, or even as a Muppets movie, the Muppets movies are always going to be a part of kids who grew up in that times, and they're going to always be part of kids' history. They're going to be part of our history. And with the Muppets and anything they tackle, any time period, anything they ever tackle, the movie always ends with you laughing, and just you with a smile on your face, and that is exactly what it's done to me. Guys, put in the comments below, what is your favorite Christmas movie? If it's this, tell me what was your favorite. If it's not this, tell me what was your favorite Christmas movie. Guys, I am really hoping you all have a very Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year, and no humbug. Love you guys. This is Nick Smith signing off.